All right, once your ASDM comes up, it looks like this. This is your general section. Here in my device part, obviously gives me information on my device, what version, what iOS version I'm running on the ASA, what ASDM version I'm running, and then some setup on my router, how big the flash card is, how big the RAM is, things like that. And also your uptime. Now again, it's not odd to see a Cisco device that has an uptime of 5 years. All right, so then we go to VPN sessions. Obviously, it shows you all your information about any open VPN sessions, whether it's their AnyConnect client, IPsec tunnels, or VPN tunnels. Then we go down to system resources, and obviously it's showing you how much of the CPU is being used and how much of the memory is being used. Now, this is where you can kind of see. Now, again, this is a brand new ASA. There's nothing configured on it but some basic stuff, you know, a host name and a couple interface IP addresses, no VPNs, and you can already see it's using up a little bit of memory already. So then we go to interface status, and then we can see the status of the interface. Remember, there's 3 VLANs by default: inside, outside, and DMZ. So I don't have a DMZ configured. The inside interface is up. Everything's working. I'm only transmitting at 4 kilobits. Outside interface has not been configured yet. Then we come down here to traffic status, and now we get our information on our TCP usage. So if I was transmitting some actual data, you would actually see some information across here. And then I have my logging window. Right now logging is disabled. And we'll talk about logging a little bit later on in this section. So that's it. That's the general section. Very helpful, just kind of a snapshot of what's going on. If you click on Firewall Dashboard, again, you get statistics on the connections, drop packets, possible attacks, your access rules, which can't wait till we get in that chapter. Woohoo! And then there's some other information as well. So again, that stuff is all just monitoring help. All right, the one you're probably going to be using the most in class is this configuration tab. So if I click on that, now I can start configuring things. So what can I configure? I can hit the startup wizard and it'll walk me through stuff, or I click on interfaces. So there's my inside interface, my outside interface, shows you what switch ports are used, the security level. Remember, it's 0 through 100, 0 being the least secure, 100 being the most secure. Obviously, you want to have the most security on your inside interface. Then your VLAN numbers, IP address information like that. So I can hit edit. Here's where I can assign that IP address. So again, I've already assigned it, through the CLI as 192.168.1.1. But once you get in, you can change that. You can change the security level, pick which ports are enabled for this, things like that. So right now it's ports 1 through 7. Port 0 is by default used for the outside interface. That's why some of you guys in class on the last lab, when you were plugged into 0, it wasn't transferring any information. You couldn't get the TFTP server to work. That's why I usually move you guys over to 7. So that's where you would configure your interface information. Again, configuration, interfaces, and then you can just hit edit and you can change the IP address or do whatever you want. And there's other settings here as well. Device name and password. Here's where you can put the host name in, put your domain name in. You can set up your passwords, telnet or your enable passwords. And then there's system time. Now remember, system time is very important, especially like in a Windows environment, because you're only allowed to be off by 5 minutes from the server. And there's also, when you're logging stuff and you want to see when things happen, it's very important to know exactly when they happen. If you're testing something, typically like through Cisco networks, you want to know within 1 second when things happen. That way you can kind of see, what change, what time the change went in, what it sparked. If you're 4 minutes off and you say, okay, the change was here at 5 o'clock exactly, but then this didn't happen until 5:04, it leads you to believe that maybe that change didn't affect that. But if they happen right at the same time, hey, this one happened at 5, this happened at 5 o'clock and 30 seconds, you know that this change affected that. So it's very important to have your clock set. So you can just click on clock. You can change your time zone. Mine's all 8 up here. So we're -5 in the Eastern time zone. And there we go. Put the date, and then this will tell you what you're saying. You can set your seconds, and you can apply. So now that's applied. Now NTP, remember, is Network Time Protocol. And typically, in most places, they set up a server to run the Network Time Protocol, and then they sync that server with an atomic clock somewhere on the internet. And then all their other devices then go to that one server through NTP, and they sync their time. So you've got the atomic clock on the internet syncing the server, and then you have the server syncing all the devices. And that way everybody's on the same sheet of music. That's how you can tell the organization is set up correctly. If you walk into a place and the phones are 5 minutes off from the PCs, people start showing up for meetings late because one guy looked at his phone, one guy looked at his PC clock, then the clock on the wall is different. You have all kinds of issues. Most places you can actually have clocks that all interconnect and go to your NTP server as well. That way everything can be on the same sheet of music and everybody has the exact same time, which is nice. So that's NTP, Network Time Protocol. And again, you can configure your ASAs to synchronize with a time server that you have, or maybe a time server on the internet. So again, very important to set that clock. So a lot of other features there. Again, I click on firewall. I can configure all kinds of my NAT rules. Again, we'll get all the security stuff a little later on in these other chapters. So trust me, this is the easy stuff. Setting up VPNs for remote access, setting up VPN site to site, which is a very popular one. Then I click on device management. In device management, I can do all kinds of things. I can set my firewall up for DHCP. Now remember we talked in intro to networking about DHCP and how it has a 4-step process. Discover, offer, request, acknowledge. And remember the discover and the request are both broadcasts and they are killed by Cisco devices or routers by default. So you can set up the ASA to forward those and be a DHCP relay agent. So, and you can also set up your ASA to be a DHCP server. So in a small network where maybe they only have 1 or 2 servers and you don't want to run DHCP on that as well, again, you can run DHCP through any Cisco device, whether it's a, let's say a router or an ASA. So basically you decide where you want to do, you hit edit, you put in your range, you enable the service, then you put your optional parameters in, where's the DNS server, what's the DNS name, how long is the length of the leases, things like that. So again, you can set your ASA to be a DHCP server. A lot of other settings you can do, DNS, you can be a DNS client, set up for dynamic DNS, and then advanced, you've got your ARP, HTTP redirect, your IP6 stuff, which we'll get into a little bit later, and your SSL settings. So really, the big ones you're probably going to use are your DHCP server, and here we can set up some other information, such as Telnet or SSH. All right, let me close these up before I start talking about that. So okay, so under device management and then access or management access, we can click on this tab, and now we can set up either Telnet or SSH. So if I click the interface and hit edit, I can set up Telnet or SSH, what IP address I want to use, things like that. Now with SSH, remember you have to look at your book. There's some extra information that you have to configure as well. You have to go into your certificates. You have to create a certificate, so you're going to make a new one, give it a name, give it the passphrase. Remember SSH is the secure form, so it is certificate based here on the ASA. So you create all that stuff. Telnet is not. So you got to decide which one you want to go. If you're just going to use this from inside a company to talk to equipment inside the company or the ASA through the inside interface, you can probably use Telnet. It depends on whether you're worried about somebody sniffing inside your network, which obviously the bad guys can do. But it depends on the environment too. If it's just a manufacturing place where you're just making widgets and you're not going to have some, hacker come inside your organization to grab information, you can just use Telnet, you're fine. But if you want to be more secure, you want to set up SSH. Obviously, inside any kind of medical organization, legal or financial organization, you have to have SSH. Most of your communication inside, even though it's inside, still has to be SSH. Obviously, because there's a chance of patient information or financial information being grabbed. So just make sure you look at your book and you read those 2 parts about the Telnet and SSH. There's only 2 to 3 pages. And make sure that you are okay with setting this up. We'll be playing with this a little bit in the lab, and then there's some extra lab time this week that you guys can come in if you want to still play with some of the extra stuff that we're talking about. So again, in your labs, don't be afraid to play with this stuff. You can click on anything, and until you hit apply, nothing happens, which is nice. There's also a monitoring tab, which allows you to monitor different things. DHCP, the leases, things going out, your VPNs, routing, some other properties. You're logging in again. We'll talk about logging in just a second. And that's about it. Save the configuration. So now you can actually save these files to flash, which is nice. And then again, you're monitoring from your home look. So works just like any other kind of web interface, forward, back, refresh. I can save the stuff, but this does not save to your PC. It saves the running config to flash. So make sure you're aware of that. All right, so that's about it with the ASDM. You're going to play with that a little bit in the lab, and I'm going to have you set up a couple things. But we'll kind of go back and forth between the CLI and the ASA, or I'm sorry, the ASDM. So the ASDM is nice, but you still need to know some of the command line stuff for times when you can't get into the ASDM. All right, when you want to get out of the ASDM, if I just click this, obviously it says, hey, do you want to save your configuration to flash? No. And then, hey, are you sure you want to exit? Yes. All right, now let's talk about the router itself, or the ASDM, sorry. Now, a couple commands that we talked about. Here I'm in config mode. Remember, whenever you want to get into privileged mode fast, exit takes you back one level. So if I type in exit, it takes me back to privileged mode. But what if I'm in config T and then I'm in interface, Ethernet 0/0? So now I would have to type in exit twice in order to get back, because now I'm in a sub interface, or what they call the sub-configuration mode. If I type in exit, that takes me back to configuration mode, and then if I type in exit again, it takes me back to privilege mode. Or I can just type in end, and end takes me right back to privilege mode. So remember, END will always take you all the way back to privilege mode, and then exit takes you back one level. So think about where you're at. If you're ever in sub-configuration mode, just type end to get back. All your show commands are run from privileged mode. Now, a couple things I want to show you. The first one is the pipe command. And the pipe key is a shifted key underneath backspace. So if you look underneath backspace, you've got your backslash key, but if you shift that, you get the pipe. And you can use that to cut down commands. So like if I do a show run, I get the entire running configuration. But if I'm only looking for a specific part in that show run command, I can use the pipe to show me that. So watch this. I can do show run space. Now I'm going to put the pipe in, space, and then I'm just going to say include the IP address. And now it only shows me the IP address information from my running config. So you can also use it to begin at certain sections. Show run pipe begin at the interface part. And then boom, it starts right where the interfaces show. So it's kind of a modified show interface, but again, make sure you're using that pipe and you're thinking about what you're looking at. If you only want to see a certain part of the thing, or the running configuration, the starting configuration, there's no need to sit here and look through the whole thing and then try to scroll to what you want. Just do a show run space, put the pipe in, and then put include whatever you want to include. Include interface, or include VPN, or include SSH, include telnet, include stuff like that, and that way you can get to that. So end takes you there, pipe takes you back. All right, now another command is the tab key. The tab key will finish some commands for you. So let's say I go into config T, and then I want to type in host name. So if I type in host and hit tab, it finishes it with host name. Now remember, when you hit tab, it can only give you information if there's only one way to finish that command. So let me show you. Let's say I go into line console 0. So now I'm going into my, boy, that worked. I do hit the space there. All right, now that I screwed that up, apparently there's no line console 0 on the ASA. So just let me show you this real quick on the packet tracer. So I go enable config T, and then line console 0. So now when you're in the line console, there's two different commands. You can do logging synchronous, or I can do login. So if I just type in log and hit tab, it doesn't know what to do because it doesn't know the difference between what command you're trying to finish. Are you trying to finish logging or log in, or are you configuring logging synchronous? So if I put the extra G there, now there's only one command that has two G's. And if I hit enter, the logging comes up. Then if I hit SYN, pop synchronous in for me. So make sure you're using that tab key to finish your stuff whenever you can, because obviously that'll help slow you down or speed you up. And then make sure you're using that pipe command to slim your stuff down. it's nice to get into the habit. If you can get in the habit of using those at the very beginning, your Cisco stuff goes so much faster. You become so fast on the terminal. People will think you're the Cisco. All right, let's go back to the ASA and talk about a couple things. All right, so back to the ASA. What's one other thing? If I hit enter when it says more, it'll move me one line. If I hit the space bar, it moves me an entire page. So keep that in mind. All right, two things I want you to remember. You have a running config and a starting config. The running config is in volatile flash or the RAM, and whenever power is disabled or recycled on your ASA, you lose the running configuration. All the changes that you do to the ASA or even a router are done in the running configuration. So when you're done, you have to do a copy, run, start. Remember, it's always copy from to. So copy from running to start. And you want to save your configuration. Then it'll say, hey, is this the name of the file? Yes. So you just hit enter and boom, and then it copies that stuff. So you can delete one or the other, the running or the start. So if you want to delete the running config, you go into configuration mode and you do a clear configure all. Wow, it helps if I spell that right. Somebody take this beer from me. So clear configure all. And again, this will clear your running config. So now that I hit this again, it goes right back to Cisco ASA, which is the default config. So it's like, hey, you know, we've wiped the RAM out. What do you want to do next? So now, if I do a reload, I don't want to save this. Proceed with reload. Now, if I do a reload, remember, during reload, it grabs the iOS. Then it grabs the starting configuration, makes a copy of that, and loads that copy into RAM, and the copy becomes the running configuration. So once this runs, I should see my normal stuff, and I'll pause this till it's done. All right, so that finally finished. So again, you can see my thing turned back to 5505 ASA, why I named it. So again, clear configure all from the configuration mode will remove the running configuration. So remember that. Now, if you want to remove the startup configuration, the command is write erase from privilege mode. So enable Cisco password, and it's WRIT, write erase. Now, I'm not going to run the command because I want to lose my configuration, but that's the command. So if I want to get rid of my running, clear configure all. If I want to get rid of my startup, it's write erase. Now when you get rid of your startup and you type in reload, it will reboot. There will be no startup command, so it should ask you, it should go to the wizard and say, hey, do you want to do the interactive prompts and set up your stuff? Because remember, you have to have an IP address in order to do anything really. So if you ever get stuck and you think your configuration is screwed up and you want to reload the startup, you can just do a clear configure all and then just do a reboot, or you can just do a reload, and that'll work as well. But if you want to erase everything and start over from scratch, it's write erase, and then that should give you the prompts again, so where you can set up the IP address, the domain name, things like that.